Hi, I'm Michelle Lee. I am here with Maria Brown from Serenity Wellness and Coaching, and we're going to be talking about the art of night and day in our creative soul journey. So, last session we were talking about our own insomnia techniques we use to fill our tool belt so that we can, get a good night's sleep and have good productive days, fun days. And that led in off camera to a discussion about, our morning and night routines and how that really has helped in addition to all the other techniques we use. So we wanted to talk a little bit about that today. And I wanted to hand it off now to Maria to discuss her evening routine. And Maria, can you tell us a little bit about what you do at night as far as, today we're focusing mostly on our creative practices, although I know you do other things as well.
Yeah, so the evenings are sacred for me. Getting a good night's sleep is just the most important thing for my health. So, really settling in at night and making sure I'm not around any screens or the phone, except to put on some music, is really important, especially 30 minutes before going to bed. And so, my evening routine to wind down is usually I'll go into the studio and put on some music, usually Delta Brainwave. I just search on Spotify and the Delta Brainwave music comes up because it just sets the tone. And I just set an intention for like where I want to be at the end of the day or where I want to be in my sleep, right? Sometimes I'm like, okay, I want to process something that I really didn't really understand throughout the day, or I want to, I don't know, somehow get some more clarity on something that I am questioning. So, what I usually do is I'll sit down and I'll do some neuro art or neuro drawing or neuro lines. It's known as a bunch of different things, but my background behind me is an example of something that I do. And so it's a form of meditation for me where I just get to doodle, but in a way that is allowing my brain to process and allowing me to get out of my head and really connecting with my body and my intention. And so I'll usually do that for anywhere between, it can be 15 minutes, it can be an hour. Sometimes I get so lost in these types of
Mhm.
drawings or
Mhm.
the Zentangle, which this is kind of a combination of both. But I get really lost in it, and sometimes it's an hour or more before I even realize it. And then I'll just go in and relax in my bed and do 4-7-8 breath work, which is just
Mhm.
inhaling for 4, holding the breath for 8, and exhaling through the mouth very slowly as if blowing through a straw for a count of 8. And I'm sorry, 4-7-8. And
Yeah.
then I usually am just in such a zen mode that I drift off into sleep. And I don't
Perfect.
know, that's my evening thing, but the creative piece is
Uh-huh.
critical. And this is a different palette. Like a lot of times I find my evening palettes are very soft. This one was fiery, and I was
Mhm.
trying to remember what was going on that day. And I usually will write something on the back, but I didn't write anything on the back of this one. So I don't know, but it was probably some sort of turmoil and it just kind of let me, get it out. So yeah, those are not usual for my evening palette. So
Well, I
that
mean,
was
it looks still
interesting.
very zen. Maybe it was a
Yeah,
hot day, or maybe you were feeling very passionate that day or something, to
maybe. I'm gonna go with the passion.
I like that too. Yeah, just throwing that out there. So,
So I
um,
understand you have like a really great process too for the mornings, and I would love to hear that.
yeah, yeah. Well, like you said, like evenings are sacred to me too because I have to get a good night's sleep. Like and so many people have that same struggle. So I love that you introduced different techniques so we could each find, the things that work for us and try little things out for that perfect recipe for our unique lives. But I like to think of what I do in the morning as like most people wake up and they're right away handing over their control to someone else to program their day, whether it's their family, like, oh, I'm doing this, that, and the other thing to get my family off to school, to work, whatever it is, or immediately jumping on social media, work email, or even worse, mainstream news, which is like feeding you fear and distraction right from the get-go. So there is no way you can launch from those things, unless you're already a Zen master, into a day of flow and creativity and empowerment. So I like to start my mornings. Typically, I start first thing after I let the dog out is meditation. I know meditation isn't for everyone. It can be. I think, that's one of the things that people say, oh, I've tried and I can't. And sorry, that's a cop out, because you've probably tried once and gave up because you didn't turn into a Buddhist monk who had a perfectly silent mind, for 10 minutes. But anyone can do it if you start small. But I generally meditate for anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes, even an hour and a half sometimes. Because right now I'm in a pretty hardcore, like long process for specific reasons. But my creative part of the morning, which I love and anyone again can do, and maybe is an easier entry point to creating a morning routine, and like you said, an evening routine, is I do what I call water doodling. And this was a technique I just created willy-nilly by goofing off, really, in the mornings, like wanting to be creative, but knowing I didn't have studio time that day. So what I do, and I teach this in some of my workshops, is we do this just real loosey-goosey, abstract water laying on a piece of paper, dabbing colors in, sometimes with a shape like a heart or a spiral, other times just totally abstract, throwing my brush around. But I leave white space, and then I start to doodle into the white space using ballpoint pens that are different colors. And what I love about that is I'm uniting this like right brain, feminine water element flow of color and looseness with this left brain tool of a pen, but they're all in beautiful colors. You could do it just as easily with a pencil, a lead pencil, or a black ballpoint pen, even colored pencils or crayons or something if you wanted to. But I'll show you some examples. Like here's one I just did in a class that I was teaching. So you can see that like there's the paint, there's the shapes in between the whites, the negative space, and then as it dries, as I'm doodling into the white space, that paint dries, and then I go back in and I doodle over the watercolor. And one of the ways I like to start is, rather than even starting with my own shapes, I sort of look at, here's another one of a heart.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love that.
This one I use straws to blow out in. That's in a Radiant Heart workshop I do, but I do this a lot just on my own doodling. But a lot of times what I'll do is, if you look close into my doodle here, is I'll just look at the shapes the water sort of made, the watercolor, and then I just start by outlining that. And next thing I know, I'm like, oh, this looks like a flame. This looks like a heart. Let me add dots out off the end of this point. Like it just sort of organically grows from that point. And then here's one that's more abstract. Again, this was also using straws, but where I just did 3 blobs. It's as simple as that,
I love it.
And it's a beautiful process of getting out of your head and into your heart, just like I think the Zentangles and the Neuro Arts you're doing at night. And I wanted to share something from this. This is a book I know I referred to you, Your Brain on Art, and that I tell a lot of people about. And, using this, like getting into the right brain before bed or kicking off in our mornings, is a great way to like balance our energy, because we're all in left brain all day long. And the interesting thing is that in scientific studies, and they've tracked this through near infrared spectroscopy, right?
Spectroscopy.
Okay, thank you. They found that doodling and coloring and free drawing all activate the prefrontal cortex, and that in turn, that doodlers end up being more analytical retain information better and are better focused than their non-doodling colleagues because they've balanced that connection between the left and right brain instead of being so imbalanced all day long. And
I love that you said that. I
yeah,
really do because, as a teacher, as a science teacher for all those years, my students, when they were doodling, I just wanted to see what they ended up with at the end. And they were like, "You knew I wasn't paying attention." I said, "Oh no, you've processed more than the person next to you who wasn't doodling." So, I love
yeah,
that
because
you
it's
brought
almost
that
like
up
they're
because it's
opening up more to the knowledge coming in, right? By allowing that right brain to be doing something.
well, they're relaxed, right? They're in that
Hmm.
rest and digest mode because
Hmm.
they're just in flow. So they're taking in and processing much more effectively than the person next to them that is like furiously taking notes and trying to get every word down that, the teacher's saying. Like they're not relaxed at all. They're activating that fight or flight response inside of them because they're scared they're
Yeah,
going to miss something, right? Where the
yeah.
person who's just doodling is literally taking it all in. So I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to mention to people, like as far as having a creative practice in your day, um, that it just 45 minutes of some kind of creative doodling or drawing or painting, even if you have no experience or skill, it reduces your cortisol and other stress hormones, and it boosts your immune function and your cardiovascular reactivity. So you're getting all these physical benefits in addition to, like you said, the relaxation, the knowledge retention. And by ritualizing art, it actually makes your days more productive.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing I wanted to say just about like the technique on this,
Hmm.
sometimes I'll start with some circles and then just bring lines in and then just take the marker and fill in and then take
Hmm.
colors. And sometimes it's colored pencils, sometimes it's markers. This was markers. But other times it'll just be lines and the lines will make all these different shapes. And then I look at the white space and I'm like, "Oh, what do I
Hmm.
wanna fill in here?" And just
Yeah.
kinda smooth out those connections. So,
Yeah.
just a little bit of there's no wrong way to do this, right? Because it's
Yeah.
all about taking the brain, the intention, and allowing your brain to reprogram, by shifting your nervous system and by totally relaxing and just getting into that flow state and that Zen state. So it's great. And this is a practice that I have. I will say that it was one that I developed consciously, right? So I made a
Hmm.
conscious effort not to be on the TV, not to be on my phone
Yeah.
at the end of the day because there was a period where I was having a lot of disruptive sleep and I just value every moment that I get for sleep. So, yeah, now it's just a regular practice. So,
Yeah. And I bet
I
it opens your mind up, you tell me, like to better dreams too. Like you probably have more intuitive dreams, maybe more messages coming through, or dreams even about like a creative inspiration.
yeah, I definitely wake up in the morning more relaxed and not listing. So I used to always wake up like immediately. It was like, oh my gosh, I got to do this, 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 and this. And I'm not in that place anymore. And, I do end my day right before I go to bed. There's five things that I'm grateful for that happen throughout the day, and I just
Oh, that's great.
acknowledge them. And
Uh-huh.
then when I wake up in the morning, it's like five things that I'm grateful for. Maybe it was somebody in my life or a place that I've been or just a conversation maybe that I had a week ago or with somebody. So like you said, those alpha brain waves are kicking in pretty heavily when you first wake up. And I'm in this very relaxed state. And yes, sometimes I have clarity. Sometimes I have some really kind of wacky dreams. Whereas I would say in the past, I everybody dreams, but I couldn't recall them. So
Hmm.
now I have better recollection of dreams, not
Hmm.
that they make any sense at all,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it is interesting. So keeping a journal about this stuff is also, really great practice. Again, these are practices, right? When we're rushing through life, we don't honor the practices, but when we consciously slow down and be present in the moment, I feel like the practices are very meaningful. Just to set a practice to say I have one doesn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily work, but when you're really present in the moment and you slow down and reflect on those practices, which is wonderful what we're doing here right now, kind of
Yeah.
reflecting on our practices and get to share this with other people. I just yeah, that's what I savor. That's what I really love. So,
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
glad I'm in that place now.
one of the things I wanted to add to that was like when you give yourself time for this for a creative practice. And like in the mornings, I also have fitness, whether it's yoga or something else, that comes after the meditation and art. So all these things on different levels, you're activating your holistic body, like on every level you have your energy body, your mental state, your emotional state, your physical body. And um, the by activating these things, you're more able to create lasting change. So like when you just implement one little thing here, one little thing there, that's a great way to start shifting as long as you're consistent. But once, like you're saying, they become a practice in your life, a ritual, and especially creativity has been proven to when you that's ritualized in this spot where you're becoming present, you're in like the two practices we're mainly talking about today, this kind of doodling and really like not trying to achieve some fancy piece of art, is it's like you're creating a playground for yourself and you're
Yeah.
opening this space, and all of these things, especially the creativity, starts building this level of subtle awareness in your life,
Mhm.
and it makes you better able to pick up on things at work. It makes you more aware. Like when you brought up dreams, for years now, I've been keeping a dream journal, and like a lot of my dreams are so whacked. Like I love telling my daughter about them because she's hysterical. She actually takes notes sometimes, like mom's crazy dreams, because they're so funny. But I've found that when I look back on them, they're not all that crazy. There's often a lot of times I have spirit animal messages in there, but even if that's not a thing, a lot of times I can look back and see what had been happening around that time or was about to happen, and there were indicators in my dreams that I would never have been aware of. Just like when people who practice art therapy, right? They see things come out in the art that cannot be released by the conscious mind. They're from the
Yeah,
subconscious. And our subconscious is so powerful. And one of the best ways to access that subconscious is allowing yourself that playground of creativity. And I think that speaks to both how you and I are entering and exiting the day by
yeah.
opening the doors to that, inner playground.
Yeah, and I also find that on the days that I say, "Well, I've got too many things to do, I've got all this stuff to prepare for tomorrow," those are the days that I need it the most.
Yeah.
So that's now that I listen to my body and the story
Mm-hmm.
that's going on in my head, I'm
Yeah.
like, "All right, it's time to slow down," even though I have, like, this anxiety building up in me going, "But there's too much to do, there's too much to do," and I'm like, "Nope, it's time to, like, get what I can done, be okay with that, and sit down and do something because I'm not gonna fall asleep and I'm not gonna get restful sleep. So I'm not gonna be any good to myself or anyone else in the next day if I don't slow down and take this time for me. So
Right.
I've
And also,
learned that.
you could just, even if you just squeeze in 5 minutes on those days, because then
Yeah.
you have shown your integrity to yourself that you're following through in this practice, even when it's limited in time. You've still followed through and can be like, yes, I honored myself. I opened that inner playground. And what you said reminded me, there's this like saying of like a meditation master teaching his, talking to a student about his meditation, and was like asking, like, did you do your meditation practice today? And the student was like, no, it was a crazy day. I just didn't have enough time. Like, how am I going to squeeze it in my day? I don't even have 5 minutes. And the master says, well, then you need to do an hour. Like that, just exactly
Exactly.
that thing. Like when you don't have the time is when you most need that pause.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and again, that's such a great message, just
Yeah.
listen to your body, listen to the stories in your head. And when you think that it's one of those days that you just don't have the time, that's your first clue that it's time to slow down, take a breath, and just do something. I mean, even if it was one of these circles or even behind you, one of those mandala petals or, just
Yeah,
one
there's times
thing.
I've got out and I just like went into one of these, where is it? One of these things and been like, okay, this is the time I have today. I'm just gonna do this little, and just for that 5 or 10 minutes, I got so much joy out of being able to take that little break, and just play with color in this tiny little playground on my phone,
Absolutely.
you know.
Actually, I think on the one behind me, the stripes, it was
Hmm.
like I was doing 5 minutes, I had like 5 minutes. I think I actually did that in the morning where I was doing just the one all the way to the side there where I was doing just the stripes. I just had
Hmm.
like 5 minutes and that's what I did. I was like, "Oh, let me just grab a couple of the markers that are still out," because I just leave it out and it's done when it's done. Like, there's no attachment to the outcome. So,
Yeah,
yeah, it's all good.
even better. Well, I think we're good for today on our conversation, but I think that leads into a nice topic for next session next month, and that is, talking about how to work these different practices into your life and how we can each build our sort of unique little rituals or set of practices by creating, mini shifts that lead up to big change. So how does that
Right, I
sound?
love that. I love that, I think that's great, and also how to give yourself grace when you're not following the practice every day, because it comes with time, so it'll be great to talk about that. I look forward to that.
Okay,
Thanks
sounds
for
good.
hosting today, Michelle, this was
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, thanks for joining me, and thanks to everyone who's watching. And
Yeah,
please, I invite you to follow us on social media wherever you see this video, and also on YouTube. I'm always at Michelle Lee Arts, and Maria you can find at Serenity Wellness and Coaching, or Maria Brown Breathwork on some of the
social media.
social media. So, all right, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, have a great day.
You too.